Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I just want to make sure that all the attendees has been able to access the session. So welcome to day 4 of the Small Scale Fishery Open House with the topic on justice and equity. I am Margareta Quina. I am an Ocean Equity Advisor to Indonesian Ocean Justice Initiative. And we are here for the upcoming 90 minutes where we're going to have a really exciting panel discussion on sustainable ocean economy for small-scale fisheries, lesson learned in achieving ocean equity. This session is organized by Indonesian Ocean Justice Initiative, hosted by IOG, with Blue Venture Indonesia. And today we have 4 distinguished speakers to kickstart our discussion. But before beginning the discussion, I would like to invite IOG CEO, Mas Ahmad Santosa, to welcome our speakers and officially open this virtual panel. Mas Ota, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Quina. Good afternoon to distinguished guests, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to thank the entire Too Big to Ignore team for hosting the Small Scale Fisheries Open House in commemoration of World Ocean Week 2021. I would also like to thank to Blue Ventures for being our partner in these seminar sessions. Furthermore, I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to the speakers who are willing to share their views and experiences in their efforts to achieve ocean equity for small-scale fisheries. Mr. Nathan Bennett from Institute for the Ocean and Fisheries, UBC, Canada. Miss Gloria Ramos, Vice President, Oceania, Philippines. Mr. Nali Rocco Toa Rivoni, Head of Policy and Partnership, Blue Ventures, Madagascar. And Ms. Mursiati, Community Leader for Kani Wakatobi, Indonesia. And thank you to all participants in today's discussions on justice and equity. That for us is really important. The Indonesian Ocean Justice Initiatives, we are starting to allocate more of our resources to understand how the idea of ocean equity translate into practices. In IOGI, we choose small-scale fisheries sector as our starting point because the unique role this sector plays in the blue growth initiatives. Small-scale fisheries play a significant part in a global market. According to FAO in 2020 report, it is estimated that about 90% of all people directly dependent on capture fisheries work in the small-scale fisheries sectors. And the catch from small-scale fisheries account for 45% of global fish production, including 2/3 of fish used for human consumptions. Small-scale fisheries also have an important role in food security and nutrition, poverty eradications, equitable development, and sustainable resource utilizations. Despite this important role, many studies documented or projected various threats that makes it more difficult for small-scale fishers to achieve prosperity and a decent living. Mr. Bennett, one of the speakers in this panel, identified 10 most common injustices as consequence of blue growth or blue economy, which most of them affect small-scale fisheries. In Indonesia, we found at least 5 key issues as most relevant to small-scale fisheries, namely Number one, issues on tenure and access to land and sea use, including matters related to disposition, displacement, and ocean grabbing. Two, inequitable distribution of economic benefits. And three, the existing socio-economic conditions in the community that have a livelihood impact on small-scale fisheries, for example, poverty. Number four, the worsening condition of marine ecosystem, i.e. decreased quality of marine ecosystem services, either due to pollution or as a result of climate change. Number five, lack of inclusive governance and human rights aspects are often neglected. In dealing with this problem, a 2020 Blue Paper on Ocean Equity, published by expert group, commissioned by high-level panel on sustainable ocean economy, categorized a framework of equity activating policy on the one side and equity blind policy on the other side. Central to an equity activating policy is how the community understands and empowered by those policies. In that light, this panel seeks to discuss the best practices from around the world, especially from the Philippines, Madagascar, and Indonesia, where community identified and access the procedures available to ensure a policy can distribute harms and benefits equitably between the small-scale fishers and the big players in the ocean development. This panel also seeks to understand the challenges and opportunities to ensure effective implementation of a policy that can nudge decision makers towards equity. Lastly, we also seek to understand the lesson learned in ensuring how these policies can bring a community closer to the triple win or 3P rules of the sustainable ocean economy, which are protect effectively, produce sustainable or sustainably, and most importantly among fishers is to prosper equitably. We hope this virtual panel can inspire us to push for policy changes that will make a difference from equity perspective. The speakers will share best practices, and each of us can tailor those inspiration to the local context we are operating in. I'm sure that today's discussions can provide real benefits for small-scale fishers around the world. Thank you very much, Quina.
Thank you very much, Pak Ota. So as Mas Ota mentioned, this is a sharing and learning panel. And by the end of the discussion, we aim to get an understanding of the different challenges and successes in writing the available regulatory tools in advancing equity concerns in the small-scale fishery sectors. And surely, we're looking forward to be inspired to get some additional menu in our reform repertoire for us to study and contextualize and eventually pushing for reforms in our respective countries. In doing so, in today's discussion, we invite 4 academic and community leaders from around the world to share their thoughts and experience. We will hear from them in the first 40 minutes of the session, and we will have a remaining around 30 minutes for engagement and deeper conversation opportunities with them. And additionally, for all audience, I'm gonna need to direct you to one of the logistical item in doing this session. So we provide interpretation from English to Bahasa and vice versa. You can click the interpretation button at the bottom right corner of your screen and push Indonesia for English to Indonesian translation and English for Indonesian to English translation. So without further ado, let's start with the first speaker, Mr. Nathan Bennett, who actually cannot make it in real time with us today due to the time difference between here, Indonesia, and British Columbia, but being so kind to provide a recording to kickstart the session. Mr. Bennett is a researcher, a teacher, a facilitator, and an independent consultant who worked for various international organizations. He has published more than 60 academic papers and book chapters on the human dimensions of marine and terrestrial conservation, small-scale fisheries, vulnerability and adaptation to climate change, and governance of the blue economy. He is also the chair of the People and the Ocean Specialist Group for the International Union for Conservation of Nature. We asked Mr. Bennett to be our first speaker to guide us through the concept and pattern of ocean injustice in the blue growth context. And we also asked him to provide what is in the academic realms, the discussion concerning emerging solutions. So let us see Mr. Bennett's remarks before I take you to the journey throughout Philippines, Madagascar, and Indonesia for the later part.
Hello and welcome. My name is Nathan Bennett. I'm an independent consultant and chair of the People in the Ocean Specialist Group for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. The talk that I'm going to present to you now is titled Blue Growth and Blue Justice, 10 Risks and Solutions for the Ocean Economy. It is based on a paper that I and several co-authors recently published under the same title. The paper was a collaboration between myself, Jessica Blythe of Brock University, Carol White of the University of East Anglia, and Cecilia Camparo of the University of British Columbia. In this paper, we review existing literature to highlight 10 social injustices that might be produced by blue growth, and then explore how they might be avoided to achieve blue justice for coastal communities and small-scale fishers. As we all know, the idea of the blue economy has been receiving quite a bit of attention in recent years in global and national policy discussion. The reason is that the oceans are increasingly viewed as a new frontier for economic development. Indeed, many national governments and corporate actors are promoting a blue growth agenda. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development suggests that ocean industries are the solution to a slowing global economy and projects that their contributions could double from 1.5 trillion in 2010 to 3 trillion in 2030. And while the blue economy is a term that is often used as a shorthand for all forms of economic development in the oceans, the original vision for a blue economy put forward by the small island developing states was for a form of ocean development that was both equitable and sustainable. Yet as companies and governments race to capitalize on marine resources, blue growth can pose substantial risks for both people and the environment. The dominant discourse that frames blue growth as beneficial for the economy, for developing nations, and for coastal communities risks downplaying the uneven distribution of potential benefits as well as harms. Of course, blue growth is often happening in areas of the marine and coastal environment that are used, relied on, and lived in by coastal peoples. There are an estimated 600 million people living on the coast, including 12 to 14 million small-scale fisheries and 260 million jobs in the fisheries sector, as well as 775 million people worldwide who have a high dependence on the oceans. Of course, claims to marine space and resources are based on much more than use and benefits. We must also consider rights, tenure, adjacencies, security, and cultural connections of nations, small-scale fishers, indigenous people, and coastal communities. And because the seas are peopled and they have this high dependence, it is necessary to understand and integrate a broad suite of human dimensions into decision-making related to the ocean economy. This can help us to avoid the potential social harms of the blue economy and instead maximize social benefits. Thus, many would argue for the constructive application of the marine social sciences. The marine social sciences include a diverse and well-established set of disciplines, methods, tools, and theories that can be applied to rigorously study the human dimensions of ocean and coastal issues and challenges. For example, the marine social sciences might provide important insights to guide ocean development through characterizing and evaluating the efficacy of governance and management. It might help to document the social context to inform planning and management. It might assess the impacts of development impacts on human well-being and coastal communities, or they might be applied to identify the social and institutional factors that influence people's behaviors, actions, and responses. But is a constructive approach sufficient to understand and address justice issues in the ocean economy? A constructive approach to applying social science to the ocean economy might not adequately address the influence of power in politics, or issues related to scale in history, or to identify environmental and social injustices. This lack of attention to the broader political economy of blue growth might fail to question underlying structural issues and thus result in solutions that simply reinforce the status quo. We argue that engaging directly with the critique and with social justice issues in particular is fundamental to avoiding the risks and achieving a more just ocean economy. Furthermore, both civil society organizations and academics have been sounding the alarm about emergent issues related to the ocean economy. Many civil society organizations, most notably the World Forum of Fisher People, the International Collective in Support of Fish Workers, and the Transnational Institute, are pushing back against ocean grabbing and blue justice issues that are being perpetrated by blue growth. This is exemplified by this report from a few years back titled The Global Ocean Grab, a Primer, and a paper that I published with several collaborators in 2015, where we defined ocean grabbing as dispossession of or appropriation of use, control, or access to ocean space or resources from prior resource users, rights holders, or inhabitants through inappropriate governance processes, acts that undermine human security or livelihoods, or impacts that impair social ecological well-being. Muniba Isaacs, researchers from the Too Big to Ignore network, and others from around the world have also been documenting environmental and social injustices occurring as a result of past ocean-based development activities, including industrial fisheries, aquaculture, oil and gas development, and blue carbon markets, and have issued calls for greater attention to blue justice. This increasing attention to ocean grabbing and blue justice can be seen as part of an ongoing critique of the restructuring of rules and authority over the access, use, and management of marine resources and areas of the ocean. Yet in our view, the risks of social and environmental injustices from blue growth are still insufficiently recognized by those advocating for substantial increases to ocean development activities. Thus, we explored past injustices produced by ocean-based economic development through a qualitative review of the literature. The central question guiding our inquiry was, what social injustices can result from the ocean economy? We used a qualitative or narrative review approach for this research to allow for patterns and themes to emerge from an exploration of the broader literature on a topic. The steps we employed included conducting an initial systematic search of the literature using key terms, then allowing themes related to the central question to emerge through open coding of titles and abstracts. And then finally, we supplemented the narrative review through additional searches of the literature for more empirical examples. In brief, our review highlighted 10 risks or social injustices: dispossession, displacement, and ocean grabbing, environmental justice concerns from pollution and waste, environmental degradation and reduction of availability of ecosystem services, livelihood impacts for small-scale fishers, lost access to marine resources needed for food security and well-being, inequitable distribution of economic benefits, social and cultural impacts of ocean development, marginalization of women, human and indigenous rights abuses, and exclusion from decision-making and governance. Due to the short length of this presentation, I'm not going to go any further into each of these topics here. This is just a teaser for the paper, which is published in Marine Policy, if you want to read more. We also published this as an open access working paper under the title of Blue Growth and Blue Justice. It is available online. Also, this paper is not intended just as a critique for critique's sake. Rather, through our critique, we aim to directly highlight the worst case scenarios and stimulate a rigorous dialogue about how to avoid these types of issues. Thus, in the remainder of my talk, I'm going to focus on solutions to achieve a more just ocean economy. An obvious starting place for a discussion of solutions is to offer the opposite of the 10 social injustices that we have identified in the paper. Following this logic, our review suggests 10 key issues requiring attention to achieve blue justice during blue growth. This includes tenure and access, environmental justice, ecosystem services, small-scale fisheries, food security, economic benefits, socio-cultural impacts, gender equity, human rights, and inclusive governance. The need to address these issues in development is already highlighted in existing international declarations and voluntary agreements. For example, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous Rights, the voluntary guidelines for small-scale fisheries, among many others. And it's also codified in corporate codes of conduct for corporate social responsibility. Yet most of these high-level agreements and policy documents do not specifically focus on the oceans. Furthermore, there has been insufficient attention to norms of inclusiveness and equity in policy deliberations, documents, and guidance related to the ocean economy. Furthermore, we argue that an explicit social justice framing ought to guide decision-making processes related to the ocean economy. The literature on social justice, environmental justice, just transitions, and just transformations defines 3 dimensions: recognitional justice, procedural justice, and distributional justice. The 3 dimensions of justice can be defined as follows. Recognitional justice refers to the acknowledgement of and respect for pre-existing governance arrangements, as well as the distinct rights, worldviews, knowledge, needs, livelihoods, histories, and cultures of different groups and decisions. Procedural justice refers to the level of participation and inclusiveness of decision-making and the quality of governance processes. And distributional justice can be defined as fairness in the distribution of benefits and harms of decisions and actions to different groups. These 3 dimensions of justice provide a broad overarching framework or a set of key considerations or practical steps that might guide national or international policy deliberations on ocean-based development or actions to take when planning specific ocean development activities or projects, which could range from renewable energy to fisheries to aquaculture. We expand on these practical steps further in another published paper titled Just Transformations to Sustainability. Finally, transforming the ocean economy to achieve blue justice may not be a simple task, and tinkering at the margins of state or corporate-led economic development may be insufficient. Achieving blue justice may require a substantial change to ocean governance to include new actors and visions, a rethinking of our fundamental assumptions regarding development, a reimagining of novel or alternative models of development, or a paradigm shift regarding the need for growth. Transformation of ocean governance may entail a substantial change in who is involved in decision-making processes in the way that decisions are made. For example, ocean governance requires a greater representation of and influence from small island developing states, civil society organizations, or indigenous peoples organizations. Rethinking our fundamental assumptions regarding ocean-based development would require us to start by asking, why are these injustices occurring, and why do they persist? Responses to these questions may yield challenging answers about unequal global power differentials and resource grabs, neoliberal and capitalist models of governance, and corporate cultures that place profits before people and planet. Imagining new or alternative models of development would require the flipping of this logic to instead place environmental sustainability, planet, and human well-being before corporate profits. Ideas such as regenerative ocean development, community-based blue economies, or community-supported fisheries show some promise. However, scaling these ideas up and out may be challenging. Finally, some authors might go much further and ask whether it is wise to even consider increasing the scale and scope of economic development in the ocean. Instead, argue for a blue degrowth paradigm. In summary, we review how rapid and unchecked blue growth can produce numerous environmental and social injustices. Through a review and critique of past injustices, our aim is to stimulate a rigorous dialogue on how to achieve a more just and inclusive ocean economy. We conclude that a commitment to blue justice needs to be at the core of the blue growth agenda. It is only through recognizing and addressing past social injustices related to the ocean economy directly that we can hope to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals pledge to leave no one behind. I thank you for your time and for listening. I welcome your questions and look forward to further discussions. Please feel free to contact me at the email listed here or to check out my website.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Thank you so much for the really important framework, the really useful framework for us to take the discussion forward. It's really interesting to me that while we are pushing for blue growth, there are patterns of injustices that has been observed and documented. I'm really sure that the 10 risks that Nathan highlighted are familiar to us all. And it's important for us to recall the solutions to these 10 problems, the tenure and access, inclusive governance, environmental justice, in the ocean economic context. The just transformation that Nathan mentioned in his presentation indeed will be discussed further in the upcoming stories from the Philippines, Madagascar, and Indonesia. So from British Columbia, I'll take you to the Philippines. We have Gloria Ramos here with us. Gloria is Vice President of Oceana Philippines and the member of the Executive Committee of Oceana International. Oceana has done impressive works on advocating for the rights of small-scale fishers. It's the largest international advocacy organization focusing solely on ocean conservation. And Oceana Philippines works to restore fisheries abundance through sustainable management interventions, such as strong enforcement of fisheries law to fight illegal and destructive fishing and protection of marine habitats. Gloria has led Oceana since its Philippine office establishment in 2014. And prior to that, Gloria was a Southeast Asia representative to the IUCN Academy of Environmental Law Governing Board. She co-founded the Philippine Earth Justice Center, a nonprofit which institutes environmental cases and use accountability tools to promote good governance while assisting in stakeholders compliant with environmental laws. We asked Gloria to share her experience in using the available regulation in the Philippines and share her learnings in ensuring small-scale fishers' participation in decision-making. Gloria, can you turn on your screen?
Hi, can you hear me, Tina?
Yes, I hear you perfectly.
I'm so happy to be here, but I have problems. I can't start the video. I don't know why.
That's all right. We
It's
actually
okay.
have your, that's all right, that's all right. We have your,
But I can perhaps share the presentation.
that's awesome. That would be fantastic.
Okay. I'll try. Oh my, well.
So if there's any problem in screen sharing, we also have, oh, there it goes. There it goes.
Okay, you can see. I'm so happy
Yes.
you can see my presentation. And first of all, I want to thank the Indonesian Ocean Justice Initiative, TI, and our honored speaker, Mas Ahmad Santosa, for um, inviting Oceana. And I'm so happy to be part of this discussion. I'm very much inspired by what Nathan Bennett said about inclusive governance. And I was thinking, oh my God, what I'm going to present is like a bird's eye view of what he said. The access to justice issues, access to resources. So I'll start now my presentation. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay. So we are part, just like Indonesia, we are part of the Coral Triangle, which means we host 2/3 of the world's richest corals. And this is the outline of my presentation. The challenges faced by fisher folks. We have very strong legal framework for protection of small-scale fishers and ensuring preferential access of fisher folks. There are challenges in this particular matter, but we are doing everything we can to ensure that the law becomes alive, uh, especially the hearts and minds of our fisher folks and decision makers, and of course recommendations. So, as mentioned, we set up our office in the Philippines in 2014, and our goal of having healthy oceans requires all of this: sustainable management, improving enforcement, and of course protecting habitats, which all redound to the benefit of our small-scale fishers. So there are more than 1,614,000 small-scale fishers in the country, and it is alarming that there has been a decline of fish stocks, and this has brought them really among the poorest of the poor in our country. And one of the biggest threats is, of course, the access. While they are given preferential access to the use of municipal waters, which from the coastline up to 15 kilometers, commercial fishing is banned in this area. There had been no strict enforcement. And as the fisher folk said in this slide, uh, when there are lots of fishes in our waters, fishing vessels with large machinery would scour them. The next day would be downhearted because there is nothing left for us to catch. So these, in essence, are the challenges faced by our artisanal fishers. There's tremendous displacement despite the constitutional provision requiring access for them, preferential access. There are lots of um, coastal development projects. It's called reclamation in the Philippines. We call them dump and fill to be more vivid about it. There have been issues also on destruction of marine habitats, which dump and fill would do that, conversion to fish funds of mangrove forest, and of course the illegal and destructive fishing, and of course, in addition, pollution and the impacts of climate change. And when we talk about exclusion, our artisanal fisher folks are one of the first to suffer. They are um, the decision makers tend to believe more on those who are funding their campaign. There's lack of storage and facilities and access to markets. So largely, it's they say it's a governance challenges. There's a lack of prioritization on the needs of our fisher folks. So, um, without batting an eyelash, I'm saying we have strong legal framework, but it is in the implementation which is the problem. So, this is the provision in the Constitution which requires that the rights of subsistence fishermen should be guaranteed by the state, and this is the preferential use of the communal marine and fishing resources. And we amended the Fisheries Code in 2014, where we also adapted the precautionary principle and the concept of an ecosystem based approach to fisheries management, which requires science in decision making. And indeed, these features were quite strong. Vessel monitoring system, Oceana's pushing hard for this to be fully implemented. And fisher folks say this is our last card. We want to ensure responsible behavior of fishers in the ocean. And we also have citizen suit, and Oceana has filed already 3 cases hand in hand with our fisher folks to ensure that our laws are implemented and to ensure that the suit filed against the Bureau of Fisheries to stop the implementation of the vessel monitoring rules will be dismissed, but it's been a stiff hurdle. Then we also have a provision against public lawsuit against public participation, or we call it a SLAP suit. So I'd like to share our journey in ensuring vessel monitoring. This is a requirement of our law in 2015. So in 2016, we started right away pilot testing of vessel monitoring technology. As expected, the commercial fishers didn't want to have this placed on board because they accept and readily say we fish in municipal waters. So what we did was put it in uh, put the device in the small bancas of our fisher folks just to show that the technology works. And it's been a long journey. We now have in 2020 rules and regulations requiring vessel monitoring for all commercial fishing vessels. It was quite a hurdle. We had to go to the Supreme Court to file an action to compel the Department of Agriculture and Bureau of Fisheries to perform their mandates, including having the vessel monitoring rules. We also have now in place, in theory, that is, science-based, decentralized, participatory fisheries management area system. The entire country is divided into 12 fisheries management areas, and we reach out. The first thing we did was really reach out to all fisherfolk federations, organizations in the country for them to know about this and for them to be part of the management board of each of the fisheries management areas, which also has a science advisory group which makes recommendations for sustainable intervention to address the um, fisheries issues in the country. So, do we have the environmental rule of law? How I wish I can say yes, but not so. We have the laws, but enforcement is not really as great as we would want it to be. And then there's not effective and fair enforcement action. So we are gathering, consolidating our linkages with NGOs, people's organizations for us to have this environmental rule of law. And we are backed by our constitution that we have the right to participate in levels of all levels of social, political, and economic decision making. So um, we had been successful in Tanyan Strait for uh, showing it as a model for effective law enforcement, and we are now doing it nationwide. There's a need for strong collaboration. There's a need for training of prosecutors and judges for them to be more aware of the laws and the risk to the lives. Appreciate the sacrifices of our enforcers to enforce our law. And we have been an ally of local governments who resist commercial fishing as pushed by some politicians. And of course, mainstreaming science based policies. We conduct expedition and uh, promote protection. And this is a picture of the seminar we did for judges and prosecutors. And there have been an anecdotal stories that they really appreciate what our enforcers are doing. And they have since started to prioritize cases filed in violation of fisheries and environmental laws. And we are happy that our Department of the Interior and Local Government have issued circulars on regulation and monitoring fishery activities, and likewise, just recently, require the establishment of a People's Council in each of the local government units, and we are doing our best to ensure that our fisher folks are engaged in these platforms for them to participate in decision making. And Oceana, in partnership with the League of Municipalities of the Philippines, also created an online platform to report illegal fishing. And we call it Karagatan Patrol. The blue lines are the municipal waters, and the red dots are the ones which can be say we which can say there's apparent illegal fishing happening in the municipal waters. So we are inspired by our enforcers reporting the apprehensions, and the fisher folks are also the ones feeding the data on where illegal fishing is happening apart from the VIRS data. So this is the recent um, instruction from the uh, Secretary of Local Government, Anyo, to hold accountable local governments which are not doing enough to fight illegal fishing. So we are hopeful that together we can work together in the fight against illegal fishing. And this one is a challenge uh, to the food security and also livelihood of fisher folks. It wants the commercial fishers back in municipal waters legitimately, and we are opposed to this bill. We have been able to galvanize actions from more than 1,400 fisherfolk organizations opposing this. We have talked with various lawmakers for them to junk this bill. So there's had been um, wonderful opposition, and this has not moved. It's still in the community level, and we are hopeful it will not move forward. So we are not just acting as a bridge between the fisher folks and decision makers. We put them in one platform, and this is an example where officials from the Department of Interior, Local Government, Bureau of Fisheries talk with them on their issues, and this is going to be a regular platform. So we also do a recognition for ocean heroes. They deserve it, and this has been inspiring to many of them. And these are our recommendations: maintaining science-based policies, continuing collaboration and dialogue, and push for no-nonsense implementation of fisheries laws, and strengthening municipal fisher folk organizations through training. We're going to have a school for fisher folks, but it's more in the school for governance so that they can be more powerful agents of change in their communities. And of course, continuing training for judges, prosecutors, enforcement agencies, and citizens. And of course, the needed communication products and media engagement. So I'm really all about this governance, not just about institutions, but it's also about people being empowered to engage with institutions and hold them to account. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Gloria, it is so inspiring. Thank you so, so much. It's really amazing to be inspired with your work with the fisher folks, especially seeing them taking the implementation of the law in their hands. I'd like to highlight the 3 citizen suits you're filing with the fisher folks in implementing the rules and taking part in the institutionalized vessel monitoring and even going to Supreme Court to implement them. And one of the questions we're contemplating in Indonesia now is how equity activating our policies. But you are showing through your work that there are creative ways in which the community's proactive actions makes a neutral rule to be equity activating. And you also shows us that sometimes defense works is necessary to even the level playing fields between the big players and the small scale fishers. So thank you so much. It was really inspiring. And from Philippines, we are going to Madagascar. We have Nali Rokotoa Rivoni, who is the head of policy and partnership of Blue Ventures Madagascar. And we specifically invited Nali to share his learning from leading an impressive program of locally managed marine area, or LMMA network in the Madagascar and beyond. So we specifically interested to learn from Nali how this LMMA network intersect with the equity concerns related to the small-scale fishery sector. And additionally, Nali's works highlight the places where the policy is located or created by the local community itself. So this is a really interesting learning from me, for me and for us all in IOG. So Nali, can you share your screen and turn on your video? All right.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah. Thanks, Margarita, for giving me the floor. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Thanks for joining this webinar, and thanks for Indian Ocean Justice Initiative, as well as to Big Junior for organizing this and highlighting the importance of small-scale fisheries in the world and the role of locally managed marine area within that. I will share with you today a case study of an advocacy campaign led by a small-scale fishery community in one of our sites in Madagascar. This presentation is already shared with a partner in Senegal within a framework of lesson learned from fisheries community advocacy in order to attain sustainable governance of fisheries. And I am honored to present this case with you collect in Indonesia and in the Indian Ocean, I think it is important to gradually create this network of partners working in the small-scale fisheries within our region. For this presentation, we will follow this plan. First of all, I will present to you the context of our study, the marine protected area, and after that, we will present respectively the community ethics response, the approach that have been conducted, and the outcomes and drivers of success. Blue Volunteers is an international NGO created in 2003 and started working in Madagascar. Then we work in many countries across the world, Indonesia, West Indian Ocean region, Latin America, within our field operation and outreach program. Our mission is to rebuild tropical fisheries with coastal communities, which means a conservation approach taking into account both the well-being of communities by integrating human rights aspect and also the ecosystem well-being. For today, we will talk more about Vedundrika's communities and Tiarika and Majapahit sites. Those three sites are respectively an marine protected area, Vedundrik, and LMMA, Tiarik, and Majapahit. As I described, LMA here in Madagascar do not have yet legal recognition by the government. However, many four kinds of product LMA is present in Madagascar, like marine protected area have already legal recognition by the government. So for our case study here today, we have this community, Vedundrika's communities, which is a marine protected area, and Tiarik and Majapahit, they are an LMMA. For the governance tools, we have three main tools that regulated those areas. First, the management of those areas have been transferred by the community, especially for the marine protected area. And for LMMA, the management is legitimated by the community at the local level. We have also this local code of conduct, which is DINA, which contains the different measures for securities at the local level and included marine conservation measure. As well, of course, we have a management plan with overall goal conservation that is required when we set up a marine protected area or an LMMA. What are the issues first? The issue was that an intensification of fishing activities within those locally managed marine area. This increased risk of pressure on the resource that might undermine not only the community livelihood, but also the local marine ecosystem. So, to brief a story about this advocacy campaign, a fishing license was issued to fish within the LMMA, and in first-hand species like shark and rays were caught as bycatch and sold at the local market. However, the community governance measure banned the catch of some of these species. In the other hand, the fishing gear of this company are more sophisticated than those used by the local communities, which are pirogue and canoe. And here the company use more large net and speedboat. Why was the advocacy campaign needed for this? When the fishing license was issued and the company started to fish within this LMA, the community asked many questions. Why do you use this kind of fishing gear in an area where the community is conducting marine governance effort? And why was the community not being consulted before the first permit was issued? This means that this ethical concept of the governance of marine resources have been not respected by this company. And the community was dissatisfaction and the beginning of a movement started. The key argument for this advocacy campaign was really an unequal fishing effort due to the quantity and the gear used by the company and the local community, and also a lack of consideration of the local governance because they have already a legal recognition to manage the local marine resources. However, they have not been consulted before the issuance of fishing licenses. And of course, an unequal distribution of the benefit of the conservation because the economy have already conducted many activities, many conservation measures in order to protect local marine ecosystem. And then when this company arrived, they profited without consultation of the local governance. What are the approaches adopted by the community in order to address this issue? First approach was to create local consultation, and within that local community consultation with local authority as well as other stakeholders. Within that local NGO working in marine conservation. Then they reach the national network of LMA in Madagascar, which is MIHARI, which helped them to raise this issue at the national level, during which they get a meeting with the ministry to specifically talk this issue. This first approach failed because the presence of NGO within the process have been criticized by some decision makers. So they changed the approach with a more coalition of local authorities and the community, and which have more pressure to discuss with decision maker at the national level. This coalition got a meeting with the ministry and figured out the issues together. The result of the second approach is positive because the fishing license of the company have been suspended. So we can say that this advocacy campaign conducted an effective local governance within this community because of the strength impact at the local level of these outcomes. After this campaign, the community manager, the LMA manager, and the community conservation measures have been enforced as they are able to protect the community's interests at the national level and get the implementation of the marine conservation enforced. In terms of territory of small-scale fisheries, this showed that when organized, small-scale fishery can implement a sustainable governance of marine resources that is respected not only by the local community, but also by external actors. The structuration of small-scale fishery within a national network allowed to bring the voice at a higher level, at national and regional level, and change the policy landscape and that advocate for the small-scale fisheries interest and livelihood. As a lesson learned, we can take this 5 points to show that community solidarities, actors coalition, and networking are a key step in order to advocate for small-scale fishery cause and to change the policy landscape at the national level. This is really important for small-scale fisher and for the network of LMMA here in Madagascar. To sum up, this community governance rule enforcement gave us a perspective of a sustainable management of local marine resources by the coastal communities and for the small-scale fishers. It pointed out the importance of a collective ownership of the conservation governance, the integration of diverse actors to figure out together a fishing territory issue in order to protect coastal communities' livelihood and also for the well-being of marine ecosystem. Thanks all for your attention and thanks, Margarita.
Thank you so much, Nelly. And it's really important that you highlighted the stark benefits enjoyed by the bigger fleets versus the cost that the local and small fisher folks have to bear. It's also really interesting to me that you showcase the communities are deeply involved in responding to this phenomena. For example, by giving the questions in the first place and comparing to the two approaches that works in Madagascar context. So community leadership, indeed, a key theme that keeps recurring throughout the speaker's presentation today. And finally, I will take you to the clear waters of Wakatobi, Indonesia. And we have a really special guest here, Mursiati, who is no other than a community leader from Wakatobi, Celebes, Indonesia. Since 2016, Mursiati has been a program manager for program Gurita Wakatobi with Blue Venture Indonesia, and her work is empowering the local community in order to manage their own resources. She co-developed a new approach called Population Health and Environment to integrate sustainable resource management and population with health program. The PhD program in Darawa aims to strengthen women's roles in community, especially in health services program, fisheries management, and conservation efforts. We invite Ibu Mursiati to listen to her stories in leading these initiatives, share her challenges and injustices that she and her community have to face on a daily basis, and taking her lessons learned that we all need to consider in our reform works. Ibu Mursiati, and Mega will help to share the screen of Ibu Mursiati's presentation. Ibu Mursiati, the time is yours.
Halo.
Halo Bu, sudah terdengar. And for the participants, Ibu Mursiati will speak in Bahasa Indonesia. So you can go to the interpretation button and click the English to Indonesia interpretation. Silakan Ibu.
Terima kasih Margareta. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore. Nama saya Mursiati. Saya bekerja bersama sebuah organisasi kecil yang disebut Forum Kehidupan Tani di Wakatobi, Sulawesi Tenggara. Kami bekerja bersama masyarakat bagaimana mewujudkan pengelolaan sumber daya alam secara berkelanjutan berbasis kearifan lokal yang ada dalam masyarakat. Terima kasih atas kesempatan yang diberikan untuk berbagi cerita bagaimana masyarakat kami di Desa Darawa menghadapi tantangan perikanan yang mereka hadapi setiap harinya. Cerita ini akan dibagi dalam 4 bagian. Pertama kita akan berbicara sebenarnya bagaimana sih kondisi masyarakat di Desa Darawa, terus tantangan apa yang dihadapi oleh para nelayan di Desa Darawa, lalu bagaimana kemudian manajemen perikanan skala lokal di Darawa itu dilakukan, berakhir dengan kesimpulan dan rekomendasi berdasarkan apa yang kami lakukan di Desa Darawa. Tapi sebelum itu mungkin teman-teman semua akan bingung sebenarnya Darawa itu di mana, Wakatobi itu di mana. Mungkin bisa kita lihat Darawa itu sebenarnya ada di mana, Wakatobi itu ada di bagian mana di Indonesia. Wakatobi sama seperti teman-teman Filipina tadi bahwa kami itu adalah bagian kecil dari Coral Triangle. Kami berada di Sulawesi Tenggara. Sejak tahun 1996 kami ditetapkan sebagai wilayah Taman Nasional. Dan mungkin hanya di Wakatobi yang 100% wilayahnya itu adalah Taman Nasional. Jadi kami itu merasa sebagai bunga-bunga dari Taman Nasional Wakatobi. Oke. Nah, berbicara tentang perikanan skala kecil di Desa Darawa. Desa Darawa itu sebuah desa yang wilayahnya itu karang dengan sedikit tanah. Jadi masyarakatnya menggantungkan hidupnya itu dari penghidupan di laut, mulai dari menangkap ikan, menangkap gurita yang dilakukan oleh nelayan laki-laki dan nelayan perempuan. Kemudian berkembang ada budidaya rumput laut, mata pencarian terbaru. Lalu di sini juga merupakan daerah terbuka di mana semua orang datang secara bebas, baik itu komunitas Darawa sendiri, orang Bajo, orang dari Pulau Binongko, pulau-pulau sekitar, bahkan ada yang dari Sinjai ataupun dari Madura. Jadi daerah mereka ini menjadi daerah rebutan karena memang wilayahnya sangat potensial untuk perikanan. Nah, sebagai bagian dari perikanan yang sangat kecil tergantung pada lautnya, masyarakat Darawa itu memiliki tantangan yang dihadapi dalam mempertahankan kehidupan mereka, bukan hanya mempertahankan sumber daya alam yang mereka hadapi. Jadi karena tidak ada tanah, maka mereka itu bergantung dari mata pencarian yang ada di laut, menjadi nelayan gurita, bertani rumput laut. Tapi kemudian bertani rumput laut, nelayan gurita ini hanyalah bagian untuk memenuhi kebutuhan pasar. Jadi setiap orang berlomba-lomba untuk memperbesar usaha mereka di laut. Ini berdampak pada sedikitnya akses, bahkan konflik di antara nelayan. Jadi ketika makin banyak penduduk, makin banyak orang bertani rumput laut, akses mereka itu semakin kecil. Semua orang berlomba untuk bertani rumput laut, nelayan sudah tidak punya ruang, di mana harus memasang jaring, di mana harus memasang bubu. Nah, dari produk yang mereka jual, komoditi perikanan ini, mereka tidak punya akses informasi. Jadi, bagaimana sih standar gurita yang benar secara pasar itu meminta seperti apa? Begitu pula juga kualitas rumput laut. Akses itu mereka tidak miliki. Jadi, harga itu benar-benar dimainkan oleh pengepul. Nah, komunitas ini hidup, ya. Jadi, ketergantungan terhadap makanan dari luar juga menjadi tantangan tersendiri. Yang paling utama juga adalah mereka itu tergantung pada air hujan. Tidak ada sumur di daerah situ. Tidak ada listrik dan tidak ada akses kesehatan. Setiap bulan itu hanya sekitar 1 jam pegawai kesehatan datang dan itu tidak mampu melayani semua orang yang ada di desa. Nah, untuk bertahun-tahun lamanya kami hidup dalam sebagai komunitas adat yang hidup dalam kearifan lokal kami, bukan hanya cara hidup, tetapi bagaimana kami mengelola sumber daya alam yang kami miliki. Jadi bagi kami, penguatan masyarakat hukum adat dalam mengelola sumber daya alam itu menjadi bagian terpenting untuk menyelesaikan masalah-masalah perikanan yang dihadapi oleh masyarakat di Desa Darawa. Oleh sebab itulah kemudian Forkani bekerja sama dengan masyarakat adat yang di sini disebut MHA Barata Kehidupan. Kita kemudian bekerja bersama untuk melakukan pengelolaan perikanan gurita ini di Desa Darawa sebagai pintu untuk mengelola sumber daya perikanan yang mereka miliki. Nah, ini dilakukan next aja, sorry. Nah, next. Oke, nah apa yang kami lakukan sebenarnya untuk memastikan bahwa masyarakat itu mampu memperoleh akses terhadap pertama akses informasi terhadap kondisi perikanan yang mereka miliki, karena selama ini banyak penelitian yang datang ke Wakatobi tapi tidak seorang pun masyarakat itu paham apa hasilnya. Jadi yang kami lakukan adalah bagaimana masyarakat itu mampu memonitor kondisi perikanan mereka, yang kami mulai dari gurita. Dari informasi ini kemudian masyarakat itu bisa mengambil keputusan bagaimana mereka mengelola mulai dari perikanan gurita. Itu yang kemudian memastikan masyarakat itu memperoleh akses untuk berpartisipasi dalam pengelolaan perikanan mereka. Ini juga menjamin bagaimana masyarakat itu merasa adil diperlakukan untuk mengelola sumber daya alamnya, mulai dari hal kecil. Sebagian wilayah tangkapan mereka itu dikelola berdasarkan kesepakatan adat. Itu mereka memastikan bahwa kami tetap punya ruang hidup dari perikanan gurita. Ini juga memastikan bahwa kami juga tetap punya ruang untuk pendapatan di masa depan, bukan hanya karena permintaan pasar akhirnya makin ditutup, dan kami tidak bisa mencari ikan berdasarkan keterampilan yang diwariskan secara turun-temurun. Oke. Bagaimana kemudian ini kami lakukan? Jadi untuk akses informasi itu kami memulai dengan mendesain satu monitoring perikanan gurita yang dilakukan oleh masyarakat. Kami mengajarkan masyarakat bagaimana sebenarnya untuk mengetahui kondisi sumber daya perikanan guritanya, membedakan gurita jantan dan gurita betina. Data itu dikumpulkan setiap hari, kemudian kita lakukan umpan balik data setiap 3 bulan agar masyarakat itu tahu bagaimana kondisi perikanannya. Dari data inilah kemudian masyarakat mendesain pengelolaan seperti apa yang harus dilakukan kepada perikanan yang mereka miliki. Nah, maka yang menjadi pilihan kemudian adalah memutuskan temporary closure selama 3 bulan di satu wilayah secara adat dikelola sebagai bagian dari pengelolaan perikanan yang mereka miliki. Setelah itu diputuskan ditutup antara Juni sampai September ketika berdasarkan data saat itu mereka menangkap lebih banyak yang kecil. Kemudian dibuka dan itu kemudian dievaluasi oleh masyarakat baik secara jumlah ikan atau gurita yang mereka tangkap maupun dampak-dampak lainnya. Nah, keputusan yang diambil masyarakat ini juga menjadi contoh atau implementasi. Sebenarnya ini hanya revitalisasi dari nilai-nilai kearifan lokal. Di sini kami mengenal ada yang namanya Namonusara, di mana masyarakat itu menetapkan satu kawasan secara adat untuk ditutup, terus dipanen pada saat masyarakat itu musim paceklik atau kencang angin. Jadi sebenarnya apa yang dilakukan masyarakat adalah berdasarkan apa yang diwariskan oleh nenek moyang mereka, kemudian disambungkan dengan data-data yang selama ini dilakukan berdasarkan hasil monitoring. Okay. Ini adalah foto peta di mana lokasi tangkapan ditetapkan oleh masyarakat Darawa. Jadi bagi mereka itu, karena ini bagian dari warisan nenek moyang, menutup lokasi tangkapan itu bukan hanya untuk mempertahankan sumber daya alam, tapi sebenarnya ini bagian dari nilai-nilai kehidupan masyarakat. Karena sebenarnya gurita itu bukan hanya sumber penghidupan, kami punya banyak hubungan nilai-nilai hidup dengan gurita. Ada masyarakat yang meyakini bahwa mereka adalah kembar dengan gurita, ada prosesi-prosesi adat yang tidak bisa tanpa adanya gurita ini. Jadi mereka juga ingin memastikan bahwa keberlanjutan kehidupan, nilai-nilai hidup yang dimiliki masyarakat itu juga bersumber dari sumber daya alam yang mereka miliki. Next, Kak Mega. Oke, nah ini kemudian setelah ditutup 3 bulan, kami juga melakukan sosialisasi. Perwakilan masyarakat itu pergi ke komunitas-komunitas yang juga menangkap ikan di daerah yang sama, yaitu di Darawa, untuk memberikan pemahaman bahwa kami butuh ruang 3 bulan untuk penutupan itu, sehingga jika memungkinkan untuk 3 bulan ke depan, daerah yang ditutup, yang sudah dikasih tanda ini juga jangan diganggu gugat. Setelah 3 bulan, ketika pembukaan, beri kami ruang 7 hari hanya untuk orang Darawa yang melakukan penutupan. Setelah itu, kita semua akan panen di daerah yang sama. Seperti itu. Jadi, penting membangun pemahaman kepada desa-desa tetangga yang juga mengakses wilayah tangkapan yang sama. Itu yang kemudian dibangun di Darawa. Dan yang paling penting sebenarnya adalah karena mereka tetap hidup di komunitas adat, prosesi apapun yang dilalui harus dengan keyakinan adat, maka itulah yang dilakukan oleh masyarakat di desa Darawa. Pada saat pembukaan, kemudian masyarakat itu bisa melihat bahwa mereka memperoleh hasil tangkapan yang lebih banyak, meski dengan waktu penangkapan yang lebih singkat, ukuran gurita lebih besar. Ini kemudian berdampak pada masyarakat sangat besar, karena setelah kita evaluasi banyak nilai-nilai tambah dari penutupan ini. Misalnya masyarakat lebih banyak membangun komunikasi antar sesama mereka. Dan yang sebenarnya paling menarik pada saat pembukaan adalah ketika nelayan perempuan mengangkat tangan dan menyatakan bahwa ini tidak adil karena lokasi yang ditutup lebih banyak diakses oleh laki-laki. Mereka meminta bahwa harus ada ruang untuk perempuan juga mempunyai temporary closure sendiri. Ada pilihan aturan apakah kami turun duluan atau kami menetapkan satu kawasan sendiri. Itulah sebenarnya. Kemudian di tahun kedua penutupan, karena ini menjadi event tahunan, masyarakat komunitas nelayan perempuan Darawa mempunyai lokasi temporary closure sendiri. Ini juga berdasarkan evaluasi masyarakat sangat penting bagi perkembangan budidaya rumput laut, karena mereka punya kawasan sangat berdekatan. Pengawasan yang dilakukan itu mempengaruhi tingkat keberlanjutan budidaya rumput laut mereka. Sepanjang tahun mereka bisa membudidaya tanpa ada musim paceklik di tahun 2018-2019 karena adanya temporary closure. Jadi temporary closure gurita tidak hanya berdampak pada guritanya, tetapi pada semua yang ada di wilayah itu, karena temporary closure gurita tidak hanya menutup gurita, tapi mereka menyepakati untuk tidak menangkap apapun di wilayah temporary closure. Kita hanya bisa melewati area itu. Itu yang menjadi hal yang pembelajaran bagi masyarakat. Mereka benar-benar mengevaluasi dan kemudian mengambil tindakan berdasarkan apa yang sudah mereka rencanakan.
Ibu Mursiati, mohon maaf sebelumnya waktunya sudah agak lewat, jadi boleh tolong di wrap up ya dalam 1 menit ke depan.
Terakhir aja deh konklusi. Ya. Nah, jadi apa yang kami lakukan di Darawa, kami hanya ingin mencoba menunjukkan bahwa apa yang dilakukan masyarakat adat itu untuk mengelola sumber daya alamnya itu hanya untuk mempertahankan hidup. Mungkin banyak status yang disandang oleh Wakatobi sebagai dari negara, dari dunia internasional, tapi sebenarnya apa yang kami lakukan itu hanya untuk mempertahankan hidup. Apa yang kami lakukan juga butuh dukungan pemerintah, meski kami sudah diakui secara legal melalui peraturan bupati, tapi kami butuh, masyarakat adat itu butuh pemberdayaan karena banyak tantangan. Misalnya kalau ingin mengetahui kondisi sumber daya alamnya, mereka tidak bisa monitoring karang, mereka tidak punya pengetahuan tentang monitoring ikan, monitoring gurita. Jadi masyarakat adat itu melakukan semuanya hanya untuk mempertahankan nilai-nilai kehidupan. Mereka butuh legitimasi secara legal dan sosial dari baik dari pemerintah maupun masyarakat. Jadi rekomendasi dari apa yang kami lakukan di Desa Darawa adalah peningkatan kapasitas masyarakat adat itu bisa menjadi pendekatan secara lokal untuk menyelesaikan masalah-masalah perikanan yang dihadapi. Karena mereka hanya punya kewenangan di wilayah mata pencarian mereka, mereka hanya bisa menyelesaikan di lingkup mereka secara lokal seperti itu. Jadi pilihan memperkuat masyarakat adat mungkin bisa menjadi bagian dari rekomendasi yang dilakukan untuk menyelesaikan masalah-masalah yang mereka hadapi secara mandiri.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much, Ibu Mursiati. It's really inspiring to listen how the local indigenous people of Darawa create their own solution and actually the framework that you mentioned about access to information, participation, and justice, it's really unique in Darawa context because you actually create your own information, create your own rules when rules are non-existent, and support was not available from the national level or the provincial level, for example. And it's really, really, really important for me that you say that everything that the indigenous people do is for our survival, is for really making sure that our values are protected, are preserved. And this all made possible with the community's access to tenure, that to this point, the tenure, the land rights is still at community's hands. And I would like to echo your recommendation that one of the most important aspects that is needed to preserve and even scale up and protect this kind of local-led initiative is really to protect the indigenous people's right and authority. So thank you so much. That was really impressive. And I believe that can take us into the deeper discussion. And I've seen one question here from Karina Yasmin, which is directed to, not specified, but the question is how to make sure the initiative will be financially sustainable. Because I believe in terms of cost and funding, there will be much more nuance involved. Or no, I was just wondering. So I would like to ask this to Gloria.
Finally, I have a video. I think,
Great. It's awesome. Go ahead, Gloria.
yeah. You know, in the structure in the country, local governments are required to um, ensure protection of municipal waters, those living near the area, and therefore there should be a budget allocated for that. And now that we have these fisheries management areas, they're expected to contribute to ensure that the um, science-based approach of managing our fisheries will really be sustained. Of course, there's a decision in our Supreme Court, Mandana's ruling, which actually gives bigger allocation for our local governments. So this is welcome news, and already we are holding dialogues to ensure that local communities work with our local governments in ensuring budgetary allocation for coastal and ocean management. So I also mentioned about the Department of the Interior local government creating a People's Council. I believe there's the People Council and various management bodies, and we have so many in the country. We are hoping that our fisher folks will then be part of those and they can be part of the decision making. So there will be priorities for harvest, storage facilities, for marketing. I understand there's also now an software which can connect our fisher folks with a buyer without need for a middleman, and all of this will be put together. We are ensuring that a management plan is participated also in the crafting, and this will be the roadmap for management of our various fisheries management areas, and of course at the local level of our local communities. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And it's really interesting that you mentioned ensuring that the local budget allocate the necessary resources for all of the things that all of the actions that the government must take. It's really important. And I also noticed that you might be able to compel that through your citizen suit as well. So it's really interesting. And the People Council and mentioning the availability of software and technology, definitely some of the key lessons learned for regulators to take. And I also want to invite Nali, because this is kind of like a different approach, where this is kind of like really community and NGO-led initiative. How do you ensure that the resources is there? Is Nali still with us? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. It's work as well, my webcam. Yeah, thanks, Margareta. Very interesting question. And this is really one of the questions that we work here in Madagascar within our team, association support team, in order to make the community empowered and autonomous management unit of marine local resources. Yeah, for that question, I would say that it is really important when you set up local governance of marine resources to have 3 pillars here in Madagascar. First of all, the community's leadership. Second, the collaboration with local authorities. And third, collaboration with NGO and other stakeholders. These 3 pillars are important in order to set up a sustainable governance of marine resources. But we need to keep in mind that the community should lead the governance in order to set up these communities' ownership of the project. The role of the two pillars is for the local authority is to support in terms of administrative and institutional process, because it is really needed in order to implement a sustainable governance of local marine resources. And for the NGO and the other actor is to support in terms of technical aspect as well as finance aspect. So these three pillars is very important on that. How to make it sustainable? It is really important to make that to keep in mind that the community, when we work with the local community, we need to set up a training process, a capacity building process, and within a year we make a milestone when the community can, what kind of training should be developed with community and what kind of capacity reinforcement is needed. And I think this correlation with these 3 main actors is important for the sustainable management. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Nali. And I do have another question. I'm checking the Q&A box, and apparently all questions have been answered by our panelists, but I would like to follow up for each panelist one question, which might be the last question we have in this short time frame. What is the favorite feature of your state legislation or regulation that you think is the most important policy in ensuring the equity concerns is taken into account in the SSF advocacy works that you're doing? Can we begin with Gloria? And after that, I'm going to ask it to Ibu Mursiati.
Yes, Margareta. I mentioned this in my presentation. You know, the establishment of science-based, decentralized, participatory fisheries management area system in the country, if fully implemented, really will make a big difference in restoring abundance of our fisheries, will increase the capacity of our fisher folks to access resources, because there has to be a management plan required. There's going to be a science, this study on the state of the fisheries, and there's going to be participation because they are represented in the management body. But of course, on each coastal communities, there they have our fisher folks have to continue to be in collaboration with one another and with the other stakeholders. So it's also important for other stakeholders, NGOs, people's organizations, academe, and government, whether national or local, to ensure that this fisheries management area system will really be fully implemented. So, and that also goes without saying that there will be enforcement plan that should be implemented, because illegal fishing by commercial fishers in municipal waters is still rampant. And in addition, there has to be transparency on the part of the government agencies insofar as apprehensions and revocation of licenses of offenders. This have to be there to deter illegal fishing and really change behaviors, mindsets. I mean, we are all part of one ocean, and we have to be more responsible considering the impacts of climate change, biodiversity crisis, and of course the health situation we are all facing, the COVID-19 infection. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gloria. I'm sorry to forgetting to emphasize the things that you have mentioned a couple of times: science-based management area and the importance of the action plan and transparency in creation of the plan. So it's definitely a lesson learned for Indonesia. And I would like to ask Ibu Mursiati's opinion. Ibu Mursiati, what is, in your opinion, the key, most important regulatory tool that can help you in your fight?
Sebenarnya tadi agak tertarik dengan pertanyaan pertama. Ini akan nyambung bagaimana mungkin bagaimana kemudian ini dijamin akan tetap berlanjut inisiatif yang ada dalam masyarakat. Mungkin satu kebijakan yang harus dipikirkan itu adalah bagaimana kemudian inisiatif masyarakat ini menjadi bagian dari program pembangunan desa. Karena di Indonesia ada yang namanya RPJMDes yang menjadi bagian dari rencana pembangunan desa dalam 5 tahun yang kemudian dibagi dalam prioritas pembangunan per tahun. Itu yang paling penting, karena ini adalah skala lokal, maka ini harus didukung oleh pemerintah desa yang mempunyai pendanaan di tingkat desa. Jadi pemerintah itu harus memberikan apresiasi atau pengakuan terhadap inisiatif masyarakat itu yang kemudian dimasukkan menjadi bagian dari perencanaan pembangunan di desa, bagaimana masyarakat mengelola sumber alamnya. Ini tidak akan hanya sampai pada level desa, tetapi harusnya itu menjadi rencana pembangunan desa. Itu harus menjadi bagian dari rencana pembangunan kabupaten, dan yang paling penting ada terakomodir dalam RJWP 3K. Itu yang paling penting. Inisiatif lokal yang ada dalam masyarakat itu harus ada dalam termaktub dalam dokumen RJWP 3K Provinsi Sulawesi Tenggara. Itu akan sangat membantu masyarakat memperjuangkan ruang hidup mereka dalam pengelolaan bencana. Seperti itu. Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Ibu Mursiati. And I really, really want to emphasize your take on how the government should play a proactive role in upscaling and preserving the community initiative into the part of a development program, and how the government also need to, most importantly, accommodated in the coastal zoning plan to ensure that the community still have the leadership in their tenure, in managing the place where they live. And lastly, I want to turn to Nali. in the last 5 minutes. Nally, what's your take on that question of the regulatory tool that has been useful for y'all?
Yeah, that's very interesting question and really key text in order to implement sustainable management of our marine resources. I think, first of all, a legal recognition of LMA here in Madagascar and maybe somewhere else in the world will be a big step in order to achieve this, if I can say that, ideal world for locally management of marine resources. Yeah. This will allow many small-scale fisher community to manage resources and to with local level. And Gloria's super idea related on science-based marine area. So a legal framework that recognize and integrate the national land planning or regional local land planning that adopt this to set up this local land planning at the local level is really important to protect small-scale fisheries right and to promote as well this blue economic growth, taking into account marine ecosystem well-being and communities' human rights. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Nally, and thank you so much for all of our speakers today. Thank you so much, Gloria. Thank you, Ibu Mursiati. Thank you, Nelly, and virtual thanks to Nathan Bennett, who do his amazing recording and provide a really important insight for us to kickstart this discussion. I know some key regulatory tools that has been really useful in the local level from the Philippines, Madagascar, and Indonesia. One key thing that Gloria just mentioned recently is science-based management area, which promulgate an action plan. And Ibu Mursiati also mentioned the importance of the recognition of indigenous people's right and the role in creating and adopting local initiatives in the development plan. And also from Nally, we've heard the LMMA and how the legal recognition of LLMA could be one of the key steps in ensuring more beneficial and equal access by the small-scale fishers. So these three key regulatory tools are really spotlighted really well in this session. And I thank you very much for all of our panelists for sharing their stories. Of course, we need to keep this conversation and moving forward with this. And I really hope that Too Big to Ignore will still be there in facilitating more conversations like this. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone in here can take something meaningful in moving forward with their work and working more with the community leaders and with the government in partnership with scientists and everyone in ensuring a more equitable works and pushing for more ocean equity in the blue economy growth. So thank you so much for everyone. I am Margareta Quina. We are from Indonesian Ocean Justice Initiative, and I am representing my colleagues from Blue Ventures Indonesia, saying thank you for your attendance in the session. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Nelly. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Ibu
Bye.
Mursiati.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.
Margareta, everyone, and
Yeah.
Thank
Nally.
you. See you again.
Yeah. See you again.
Bye-bye.
Interesting.
See
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Queen.
Terima kasih Pak Ota.
Thanks, Mursyati.